Welcome to the Health Show. We have a very interesting guest today. I've known him for over 25 years. We worked together helping people with cancer. But first, let me talk a little bit about myself. I run a support group here in Boxford, the First Congregational Church on 4 Georgetown Road in Boxford. It's for cancer patients and their families. And I'm an author of 60 Doctors Talk About the Cure and Prevention of Cancer, and also a new book I just released called Doctors Talk About How to Reverse Diabetes. I'm a researcher. I'm also an actor and a health coach. So now, Adrian, like I say, he's a clinical psychologist, and we've been working together, and it's a real pleasure to have you on the Health Show. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you very much. As Sal has mentioned, I have known Sal DiBella for the past 25 years. He's a dear friend and a tireless worker on behalf of people with cancer. I met Sal at a learning center for hypnotherapy, and later together we became certified hypnotherapists. Sal always had the strong belief that hypnosis could be used as a valuable tool in working with people with cancer. Sal likes to tell the story of that one time he visited a cancer support group near his house, and what he saw and heard distressed him. For all the people did in that support group was merely talk about their cancer and depress about their cancer. And when they weren't talking or depressing, they merely commiserated with other people who talked about their cancer and commiserated about their cancer. In short, a negative aura surrounded these support group meetings. Sal and I feel that cancer support groups should empower people, should uplift them, should raise their hopes, and most importantly, help them develop a strong, positive attitude. And so Sal and I, along with Joanne Lejean, a registered nurse, founded our support group based on these principles. In short, we wanted positive feelings to develop throughout our support group meetings. And we found this was possible by repeating things that people had to hear over and over again, because it's important to instill new ideas into people's minds so that they connect with them and that they follow what we suggested. Oftentimes, it's not just enough to hear something, you have to follow through on it. Now, over the years, we've helped countless number of people not only add years to their life, but life to their years. For Sal and I believe that the quality of a person's life, or how that person lives their life, is just an important part of that person's recovery. And so we managed to look at things in a new way and try to give people a fighting spirit, which was important for them in their chance for recovery. Now, when I talk to people with cancer, I often ask them, what are you doing to help yourself? You know, and they tell me that they have the determination and willpower to fight their cancer. But when I ask them that question about what are you doing to help yourself, they often tell me, well, I'm doing chemotherapy or radiation or some combination of the two. And I tell them, well, that's what your doctor is really doing for you. What are you doing for yourself? How are you helping yourself? For Sal and I feel that we are part of a team, that there is a team approach to healing. And you, as a patient, are an important part of that team. So it's not enough to just have the determination and willpower to fight the cancer. You must be you must not sit on the sidelines and wait for things to happen, but instead stand up and make things happen. So we need to be more positive and more optimistic and active in our recovery plan, and not pessimistic and reactive. Now, there are three planes to healing. There's the physical plane, which most of us know about. There's the psychological plane, and there's the spiritual plane. I like to talk about the psychological plane. And here is where we talk about the mind-body connection, okay? And what do we mean by the mind-body connection? And that is that what occupies the mind affects the body. And the mind, a lot of times, is affected by a lot of negative thoughts and negative images that we hold in our mind. So any action we take starts with our thinking, because the negative thoughts enable us not to think and not to act in the way that we want to act. You know, I'm reminded of a gentleman who came to one of our support groups. And what I generally do when a person comes to a support group, I ask them how they see themselves in relationship to their cancer. And this person described himself as being in a dark, deep hole, and he was scratching and clawing to get his way out, but he seemed to be trapped. He could not find a way out at all. And I told him, I said, I think it's very important for you to come to these support group meetings and hear what we have to say and hear what other people have to say. And naturally, this person was very depressed with that kind of thought process in mind. And lucky for him, he had a good support group behind him, his friends and family who urged him to attend these support meetings, which he did on a regular basis. And then after a period of time, I thought he was making some progress. And I went over to him at the end of the support group, and I asked him, remember when you first came in and I asked you to describe how you are in relationship to your cancer, and you described it as being in a dark, deep hole with no way to escape? How do you see it now? Well, he said, I'm still in that dark, deep hole, but you guys have thrown me a ladder, and with many rungs on it, and I'm beginning to climb up that ladder. And I said, and he said, I think I'm going to find my way out. Now, I don't know what the future holds, but I know this gentleman was empowered, uplifted. We raised his hope, and we helped him develop a positive attitude. And that's so important. That's so important in any time you're fighting against a life-threatening illness. I'm reminded of the story of the little engine that could, a story that I read as a little boy, where the engine had to pull a trainload of toys over the mountain to reach the boys and girls on the other side. And the other engines thought that he never could do this. He was too little, too small, you know. But the little engine had confidence in himself. And who could forget those famous words? I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. Well, each of us has to be like that little engine and believe with all our might that we think we can. You see, once we know that we can, we were able to take those actions that are necessary to help fight against the cancer. You know, if we're holding in our minds the thought process, I can't do this, or I can't handle this, or I can't deal with this, then we'll never be able to start to take those actions that are necessary to help us in the fight for cancer, against cancer. And once again, negative thoughts not only influence our actions, they influence our feelings. so that negative thoughts produce negative emotions or feelings. And these negative emotions can be very harmful to your overall health and make it very difficult to recover from any illness. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, can we eliminate this negative thinking? And the answer to that question is a definitive yes, But I know that ruminating about your illness or going over and over and over about it, or commiserating with other people, about their illness is not the way to eliminate negative thinking. There are two principles of thinking that I want to emphasize here. The first is that the mind can hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. So the important point to understand is that once we have in our minds negative thinking, we have to move that negative thinking out before we could allow the positive thinking to move in. And this is a very important point. So how do we do this? How do we do this? By correcting our thinking. If our thinking process is very negative, then we have to look at it and recognize it as being a negative thought or a negative image. And we have to begin to take corrections on it. Where do these negative thoughts come from? Well, a lot of these negative thoughts were instilled in our minds at a very early age. And we still hold on to a lot of these negative thoughts. For example, have you ever spilled something, water, juice, milk, or broken something? Of course you have. Everybody has. But think back to when you were a little boy or little girl and you broke something or spilled something, and maybe not once, but twice and 3 times, and your mother caught you. Boy, did you get a tongue lashing. How stupid you are, how careless you are, how clumsy you are. What were you thinking? You never do anything right. And if these thoughts are repeated over and over, they become part of your thinking and part of your conscious and subconscious mind. And so as an adult, when you break something or you spill something, you become the adult parent. And all of these thoughts, all of these images, come back to you, and you think to yourself, how stupid I am, how clumsy I am. I'm so careless. I never get anything right, And this is very harmful because these negative thoughts could last a long time. So we have to make the corrections as much as possible in our way of thinking. Now, the other principle that I want to talk about is that the mind doesn't think in terms of don't. If I say to you, don't think of a pink elephant, what are you going to think of? A pink elephant, of course, But if I say now to you, think of a beautiful puppy, and that image of the beautiful puppy comes into your mind, what happens to that image of the pink elephant? It goes away. It goes away. So we can change our thinking by commanding our mind, don't think that way. Don't think negative thoughts. Don't think that I'm a loser. Don't think I'm stupid. Doesn't work that way because the mind doesn't hear don't. The mind only hears I'm stupid, or I'm careless, or I'm clumsy. And so it's very important to know that we must inject positive feelings into our mind in order to make that correction. One point I want to emphasize here is that you already have the tools and resources that you need to overcome your cancer. You don't need to get anything. By using the tools or resources you already have, you absolutely have the power to succeed. And it comes down to building what we call a positive attitude. Positive attitude is probably the most important thing that you could develop and was an important part of our support group meetings. Okay, let's take a look at what do I mean by a positive attitude? Well, first of all, it's not a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's a state of mind that you create for yourself. You create that positive attitude. It has nothing to do with what happens to you. It has everything to do the way you dedicate yourself, the way you think. Failures or successes are merely thoughts about that you have about yourself, how you see yourself, how you judge what you do, and how you view the future. A positive attitude is also expressed in actions. What are you doing for yourself? What things are you doing to help yourself? What actions are you taking? You know, or are you spending your time worrying, angering, depressing, or staying in conflict? You know, a lot of time people said I have a lot of obligations in my obligations to my family, obligations to my children, to my grandchildren. You know, when you're dealing with a life-threatening illness, your first obligation is to you. Because look at it this way, if you don't take care of yourself, how can you expect to take care of other people? You just can't. You can't. So your first obligation is you. You're the most important part. You're the most important individual, and you have to do the things that are necessary to help you on the road to recovery. You know, I'd like to talk a little bit about stress, and everybody's heard about stress and its effect on health issues. But many people believe that things that occur in their lifetime, you know, are the cause of stress. And many people associate it with negative situations and events, but also we know that a lot of positive things could be stressful. Christmas time for many people is a stressful event. A wedding, moving, a new house, all these are stressful events. Actually, the cause of stress is a negative way of thinking about potential stressors in our life. And this negative thinking, again, stems from negative ideas that were instilled in us as we were growing up. Now, stress can also be very beneficial. In the case of an athlete, or it could energize us or motivate us to do our best. But in olden times, it protected us from the dangers all around us. And so when man faced dangers in olden times, you know, the body prepared for what was called fight or flight, you know. The body energized certain bodily systems that help the person engage in fight or flight reactions, either to fight off the danger or flee from the danger. And it decreased other bodily functions that were not necessary for fight or flight. And in today's world, we don't face as many dangers as we did in olden times. Today, most of the dangers that we faced are what we call psychological dangers. So you come to work one day and your boss greets you at the door and he said, "John, I have to see you immediately in my office." And your mind starts thinking, uh-oh, what did I do now? How did I screw up? What does he want to tell me? You know, and you're thinking probably all the worst possible things. I doubt anyone's thinking, whoopee, he's calling me in to give me a raise. We don't think that way generally. We don't think that. And then when he comes in, all he wants to do is tell you about an important meeting that you're going to have at 2 o'clock. And that was his whole purpose. But when we first heard that he wanted to see us, you know, it brought in that fight or flight response. And all those bodily systems became active again, just as if this was a real danger. But of course, this is not a real danger at all. So we have to understand that these are important things for us to realize and us to know. Okay, stress is caused by our thinking then. And so thinking makes it so. And we all are able to think countless number of thoughts, and some thoughts, as we said, stay with us for a long time. And it's important to point out that you create your own thoughts. What you think determines the way you see the world. And it's important to understand that other people may not see the world the way you do. And there's more than one way then of seeing the world. So it's important to understand that different people see things in a different way and think about things in a different way. Now, when we talk about stress, in the case of the worker, we said that when you found out that all the boss wanted to talk to you about was that there was a special meeting at 2 o'clock, all those stress reactions that you experienced just went out the window. You felt at ease. The problem comes in with unresolved stress that we hold on to. And these are the negative thoughts that stay with us for a very long time. Unresolved stress is a major factor in contracting and maintaining a life-threatening illness because it has effect on our bodily systems, especially our immune system. And when our immune system is compromised, it can't do its work of destroying cancer cells that are growing in our body. The truth is that we all have cancer cells growing at one time or another. But when our immune system is strong, it's able to defeat those cells and prevent them from doing any harm. So how are you able to cope with stress? Let's talk a little bit about that. But before we learn how to cope with stress, you have to be able to identify the stressors in your life. So what I'd like you to do when you have the opportunity is take a sheet of paper and divide it into 4 groups: your body, your home, your work, and your relationships. And then write down in each of those groups, some of the stressors that you face in each of those areas. And then write down next to it how you react or how you respond to each of those stressors. And you begin to see maybe a pattern. Where are the main stressors in your life? And once you understand that, you're better able to deal with it. A positive attitude and reducing stress has a lot to do with eliminating 2 very harmful emotions. And those are feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. Hopelessness is the belief that nothing in my life is working and it never will. And helplessness is the belief that there's nothing that I can do to change this feeling of hopelessness. Notice that we call these beliefs. And beliefs are changeable. They are not facts. Facts are indisputable. They're proven to be true. Beliefs can be very powerful. Let me give you an example of that. Oftentimes when a pharmaceutical company wants to test a new drug, they do what's called a double-blind study. They find a group of people and they divide them into 2 groups. To one group, they give the real pill or the real surgery or whatever. To the other group, they give a fake pill or a sham pill. And then they look later on and see, was the real pill successful in dealing with the illness that they were trying to cure? And most likely, or sure enough, if that pill was effective, the people in the group who got the real pill, were helped by it. But oddly enough, there was a certain percentage of people in what's called the placebo group who also got help. And why did they get help? Because they believed that they were given the real pill. They were given the real pill. And this is not only true with pill, it has also to do with surgeries, back surgery or spinal surgery, experimenters have done sham surgery where they pretend to do it, and the results were amazing. So science hasn't been able to explain this placebo effect, but it's all come down to how you believe. And so belief is a very important thing. So to know that many people feel that they're not hopeless, and there are things that they can do to help them on the road to recovery. So it's important to develop a fighting spirit. There have been many experiments to show the importance of a fighting spirit. I look at one by a man named Greer, who in 1971 worked with 65 breast cancer patients. And he interviewed them and he got their reactions to their breast cancer. And he divided them into 4 groups. The first group is the hopeless, helpless group, where nothing mattered and they felt that they would succumb to their illness. The second group was the stoic acceptance group. They just accepted whatever happens. The denial group went on with their lives as if there was no malady at all. And then the fighting spirit group, and they decided to fight and never give up. And 5 or 10 years later, they looked at patient survival rates. And the fighting spirit group did the best, with the deniers a close second. The stoic acceptance group didn't fare well. And the hopeless, helpless group, of course, had the worst ratio of survivors. So how do we begin to deal with stress? Okay, one way, there are several ways, but the main way, I think, is through relaxation and what we call the relaxation response. What is relaxation? Relaxation is simply a form of meditation, I guess, as many people have heard of. It's simply the art of doing nothing. It's a state where the mind is not active, it's still. If you think about it, in the course of every day, your mind is so busy and thoughts run in and out of your mind. But when we're in a relaxed state, we still the mind, we quiet the mind. It's a state where we clear ourselves of all extraneous thoughts and let them just leave our bodies. We're not worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. We're focusing on the present. We're focusing on the present and releasing all things that don't serve us well. When you're doing relaxation, you want to be focusing on your breath, and the breath comes in through your nose and goes out through your mouth. We have what is called abdominal breathing. So we're breathing from our abdomen. The breath is slow, deep, smooth, and regular, Sometimes people like to use a mantra or a word that helps them clear up a lot of these negative thoughts and negative images that they might hold. When you think of the difference between a relaxing breath and an anxious breath, when you're angry or anxious or depressed, you tend to breathe from your chest, and the breathing is rapid, and the breathing is not smooth and is irregular. And that's the difference, you know. Relaxation is an important thing to practice on a daily basis, you know. It's easy to do. You don't have to spend much time doing it, you know, 10, 15 minutes, you know, if you could handle that, that's just fine, you know. Because you'll notice that when you start relaxation, it's good to close your eyes, of course, because that takes you away from the outer world and brings you more into your inner world. You want to focus on your breathing, the breath going in and the breath going out. You want to clear your mind of any extraneous thoughts. You know, if a thought passes by your mind, just let it float away. Just let it float away like a cloud floating by over a high blue sky. Let it float away and come back to your breathing. Come back to your breathing, you know. So you do it on a daily basis, you know, do it in a quiet room where you won't be disturbed for a period of time. And you'll see some tremendous results from it, because you'll feel calmer, you'll feel more relaxed. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it, and the more relaxed you become. And you're going to find that even when you're faced with a difficult situation, you're going to be able to relax right on the spot. You know, I like to practice relaxation when I'm coming to a red light. I'm in my car and I take some deep breaths. That relaxes me, especially when I know I'm in a traffic jam. That's the worst. So relaxation is an important thing to do. Okay. Another way that we could work on stress is through visualization. Okay, visualizations are very important because they help us see who we are and determine who we are as a person. Now, we all have the ability to visualize. I don't know where you are now, but if wherever you are, you know, and imagine that you're in the center of your living room, okay? And just imagine what's around you, you know, see where the walls are, the windows, maybe there's a TV set, a computer, you know, where the furniture is located. And probably everyone could imagine that. And that's a visualization. Here's another visualization that many could try. You know, imagine that you go into your refrigerator, you open the refrigerator, and you take out a lemon, okay? And then you get a knife and you cut that lemon in half. And then you take half of that lemon, open your mouth, and you squeeze that juice right into your mouth. Now, most people will tell you that they experience a sour taste in their mouth. Why? There was no lemon, but it was the power of visualization. And once we understand the power of visualization, we are able to create new positive images for ourselves. So how do you see yourself? You know, do you see yourself as a strong person, able to overcome any kind of disability or illness, you know, or do you see yourself as a weak person, you know? But you could change that through the power of visualization. We all want to talk about the 3 C's in moving from a negative self-image into a positive self-image. And the 3 C's are choice, control, and change. Choice, always have choices. From the time we get up in the morning to the time we go to bed at night. We make hundreds and hundreds of choices each day. And these choices are obvious to all the people, you know, but we also have what we could call internal choices. And that is choices how we want to think or how we want to feel. And these are not as obvious, but they also represent choices. And not only do we have choices how we want to think and feel and act, but we also have choices in how we want to react. You have choices in how you want to feel. Feelings, as we said, are not facts. They're the direct result of our thinking. So if you choose how you think, then you can choose how you feel and how you want to act. Now, control is another matter, because there are certain situations and events that we simply have no control over. You have no control over what happened in the past. The past is over. You know, a lot of people create stress by demanding that things be different from the way they are. You know, I remember one person in our support group, and she was complaining about how her dysfunctional family hindered her and causing her to experience all this trouble and trauma now. And as she was describing it, I was saying to her, well, what are you going to do now? And she kept on with how dysfunctional my family was, and I had trouble with my mother and my father and all my siblings. And I kept repeating, what are you going to do now? You know? And finally, she said, you know, I noticed that instead of trying to understand me, you're always saying, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, can you go back and change what happened? Can you change the fact that your family was dysfunctional? Can you change the fact that things happened then that you wish wouldn't have happened? And she said, no. So all you could do is focus on what you're going to do now. What you're going to do now. See, we have to take responsibility, and the only one that we could control is ourselves. You can't control other people. You know, that's a hard lesson for people to learn, but it's true. You can't control other people. Say, I wish my husband was different, or I wish my son would do this or do that. You know, what they do is up to them. What they do is something that meets their needs. You know, your needs may be different from their needs. So the only one you have control over is you. You have to take responsibility for who you are and what you do. And as I said, you know, perhaps you could influence people, but you can only influence people by understanding that other people have their own needs. And the first thing for them is to have their needs met. Okay, so if you could show them a way to meet their needs, then you have a chance to influence them. And a lot of times that's what we try to do in our support group. You know, we knew we couldn't control other people, but we tried to influence them through making suggestions that would help them in terms of their recovery from an illness. So all these things are very important to understand. The two major choices that we have in our life, or when facing life challenges, is to choose how you want to think. Do you want to think of yourself as a survivor, or do you want to think of yourself as a victim? You know, so victimization is a state of mind. It's how we think, feel, and act. Also, being a survivor is a state of mind. It's how we think, feel, or act. Survivors never give up, and they always feel that there are things that they can do to help themselves. Victims tend to give up, feel that situations are hopeless, and they are helpless to do anything about it. Survivors see their life moving forward, and victims see their life lagging behind. Survivors are more optimistic, and victims are more pessimistic. So survivors tend to hang in there when the going gets tough, you know. And, you know, it's not to say that things are going to go easy if you have a surviving state of mind. There are going to be difficult times, but survivors hang in there. Victims, on the other hand, are not very persistent. They don't have the patience. They quit very easily, and they give up. So it's important how you see yourself. You see yourself as a survivor, or you see yourself as a victim. And again, it has nothing to do with, what happens in the future, because none of us know. But I know when we see reports where people who have the surviving state of mind, they increase their odds of surviving. So we understand that we always have choices, and that the only things that we control is ourselves. And so we need to make those changes in our life to create positive changes. And there are a lot of things we can change. You can change your health status, by believing that you can create your own good health, and you have the ability to create good health this day and every day of your life. You have the ability to create happiness in your life, and you have the ability to create success in your life, and you have the ability to create peace of mind that you want in your life. And the first step in making changes, again, is to recognize that every time you have a negative thought, a feeling, or an action, it is a choice that you are making. No one is making that choice for you. No one has the power over you to make you feel the way you do. And that's an important thing, when I hear people blame other people for how they're feeling. No one has that power. And if the thoughts, feelings, and actions that you have are poor choices, well, then you have the ability to challenge them and say, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to think this way. I want to think in a more positive way. I want to do things that are effective for me. I want to do things to eliminate all the negative thoughts. I want to be the person I want to be. And that's an important thing. So once we begin to challenge things, we have a better grasp of what we need to do in order to fight against any illness. We talked a little bit before about visualization. And again, visualization is an important part of any change that you make. Visualizing who you want to be. What does good health mean to you? What does happiness mean to you? What does success mean to you? What does peace of mind mean to you? And to hold those images firmly in your mind, and to let them grow, to let them expand, to see them in full color and stereophonic sound. We could visualize anything that we want to be and to do and to have. And these are important considerations for all of us. So, I don't know how much time we have left, but...
Well, we don't have too much time, but I just want to make a comment. It's amazing listening to you again. I listened to you for 25 years or more, and it was like going to school. I learned so much from you. It's amazing, on so many different, topics. So why don't we just, if you can, just talk a little bit about emotions and your health.
Okay. Well, when we're talking about emotions, we're talking about feelings. And a lot of people feel that they have little or no control over their feelings. And as I said before, we tend to blame other people for the stress in our lives and for the feelings of anger and anxiety and depression. And we blame troubling situations and adversities for events or situations that happen in our life. And we believe that there's little or nothing to do, that we could change them. But feelings are something that are under your control. You don't have to feel angry or anxious or depressed. There's other ways to feel. Now, we're not only talking about eliminating these feelings, but decreasing their intensity and their duration. In order to change the feelings, you have to change the images and the thoughts that you're holding in your mind. You own your own feelings. And a lot of times you hear me talk about angering or depressing or anxiety, because a lot of people see these as adjectives when they're really verbs. There's something that we do. We depress, we anger. We are the cause, we are the root of all of our feelings. It's not something that someone else does to us. We often hear people say, well, this one caused me to be angry, or this one caused me to be depressed. No one has that power over you. No one has that power over you. And that's such an important thing to understand, that we are in control when it comes to our feelings. So it's important to identify our thoughts from our feelings. A lot of times we may say, I feel like I can't do this, and take it as a feeling. It's not. It's a thought. It's a thought that I can't do this. Or I feel that I can't handle this, or I feel I can't deal with this. You're confusing thoughts and feelings. Those are thoughts. And we must be able to distinguish one from the other. Anger, why do people get angry? And really we're talking about expectations that people have about things that happen in their life, expectations about how the world should work. And a lot of us hold on to commonly shared expectations, but other expectations are ours alone. And when expectations are not met, what we tend to do is get angry. So we expect people to act in certain ways, and certain of our expectations are met because they're commonly shared. If I come by and I know you and I say hello or good morning, I expect you to acknowledge that and say hello or good morning back to me. If you don't, if you just pass me by, I might get a little perturbed, because my expectation is that if I say hello, you should say hello, or you should acknowledge my greeting. So this is the importance of expectations. So when someone's expectations are not met, they tend to get angry. So anger really is the result of unmet expectations. And the truth is, others might act in a way that you may not act in a way that you want them to act. And others may act in a way that they choose. And the way they choose is according to their needs, to meet their needs. So you have no control over anyone. You only have control of how you respond to other people's actions. A lot of people hold on to rigid thoughts, that produce a lot of the angry feelings. One of them is the concept life should be fair. Well, I hate to break this, but life isn't fair often. There are rich people and there are poor people. Some people have higher educations. People have lower education. And anyway, fairness is a standard. Whose standard do we go by? Is it your standard of fairness or is it my standard of fairness? We could look at it both ways. So when we look at that, then we can see that expectations are not always met, because other people may have different views. And so this contributes to a lot of the angry feelings that we feel. So what are the things that we could do? Well, we could learn new ways of communicating, and I think that's an important thing. If you have a problem with a person, with an individual, to go, instead of getting angry, to go over to him and say, We have a problem. Here is the problem. This is the way I see the problem. How do you see the problem? And look for how the person feels about it. And then try to come to a compromise about how you're going to work out the problem and the steps that each of you has to take in solving the problem. Understanding feelings of the other person, and this is something called empathy. Observe the other person's words or actions. Decide how the person is feeling. Does he have strong feelings about the subject? Show that you understand his feelings, and think about how he's holding on to those feelings. We have to prepare ourselves for a stressful conversation. A lot of times we go into a conversation and tempers rise. And so we have to look at what are we going to do when so-and-so gets angry, or how are we going to react to this matter or that matter? And then responding. One of the things that I tell people is so important in communication is the ability to listen. A lot of us just want to talk, and we don't really listen to what the other person is saying. And if you're not listening, you're not hearing what he has to say, you're not understanding how the person feels about a matter. A lot of times we're just interested in thinking ahead and deciding how we're going to respond to what the person said instead of giving our full attention to what the person is saying. The more you listen, the better you listen to a person, the more that person is going to listen to what you have to say, and the more, togetherness you're going to find. So these are some ways of communicating that can be helpful. Relaxation is another one that's very helpful in this, as well as visualization. We didn't have a chance to speak about positive affirmations, which are another important part of the whole process. And what positive affirmations are simply statements that we tell ourselves, phrased in the present, of how we want to be. And I like to get up in the morning and to recite some positive affirmations to myself. It's a good way to start the day, and you're starting the day on a good foot, And at night, the same thing. Before I go to bed, I like to recite some positive affirmations. And believe me, it helps me to sleep much better. I get rid of all the negativity that may have happened during the course of the day, and I implant in my mind a lot of these positive affirmations. Let's look at anxiety. Why do people get anxious? They get anxious because they hold on to anxious thoughts, and this is called rumination. And the more they ruminate or go over and over about situations or events in their life or other people, the more anxious they feel. One type of rumination is worrying, and worrying starts with the phrase, what if? What if this happens, or what if that happens? And the what if leads to other what ifs. And the more what ifs you use, the more anxious you're going to feel. The truth about worrying is a lot of times we really have nothing to worry about, because what we worry about never ever happens. So worrying sometimes is really a useless thing that we do. Now, another collection of thoughts that may cause us to feel anxious is called catastrophizing. We take a minor situation and blow it up into a full-blown catastrophe, and we think the worst of situations. If you think that a minor situation is worth being called a catastrophe, how are you going to deal with when you're faced with a life-threatening illness? We have to really think about that. So catastrophizing is where we take a situation and say on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the worst, we give it a 10. this is the worst that can happen to me. I can't handle this. I can't deal with this. I can't do anything about this. People who feel hopeless and helpless to do anything engage in a lot of catastrophic thinking. So again, how do we stop this? And we have to stop it by recognizing when you're holding on to worrying thoughts or catastrophic thoughts, and tell yourself, stop doing this. You're only hurting yourself by doing this. Another thing you can do is distraction. When you start to think those thoughts or hold those images, do something that you like to do, whether it's going for a walk, watching television, calling someone up on the telephone, anything that will take your mind off these anxious thoughts. And then another way is to focus on what you were doing when you felt anxious. Again, the theory behind this is what I said earlier, that you can't hold two opposing thoughts in your mind at the same time. So the anxious thoughts will go out once you begin to focus on new things, watching TV, calling a friend, focusing on what you were doing before. This enables you to feel better and to do better. Relaxation techniques for anxiety is a very crucial part of it, and when we do relaxation, we want to take in a lot of the things that are important for us: calm, peace, harmony, balance in our life, love, healing, and to release any of those things that don't serve us well, such as resentment, judgment, disease, and other things which don't serve us at all. We need to be aware of the symptoms of anxiety: the flushing, the sweating, the rapid heartbeat, the butterflies in our stomach. We also have a lot of mental symptoms, such as headaches or mental anguish that goes with that. Relaxation is a means of calming the mind and the body, taking in those things that serve us and releasing all those things that don't serve us. Once again, the more we practice, the better we get at it. And relaxation is a very simple tool to use and a very viable tool for helping people in their fight against any health issue, any trouble or adversity that they face in their life. And it's something which I like to practice on a daily basis. Quickly, let's take a look at depression. Again, like feelings of anger, depression is something that you do. I hear people use the phrase, I am depressed, or I feel depressed. Well, depression is not something that just descends upon you. It's something that you do, that you create for yourself. What happens when a person is depressed? Well, this was described by Aaron Beck, a psychologist, and he sees it in three forms. One, how people see themselves. They see themselves in a negative way. Two, how they see their present circumstances. They see their present circumstances in a negative way. And finally, how they see their future. They see their future in a negative way. And it all comes down to how people perceive their past, their present, and the future. And so people who are depressed are unable to deal with all these factors. So the 5 things in dealing with depression that I think are very important. Number 1 is to stay in the present. See, when you're depressed or you despair about what happened in the past, you're stuck in the past and you begin ruminating about things that happened in the past. And the more you ruminate about the things, the more depressed you get. So if you're able to stay in the present, in the here and now, it helps you, remove all those negative things from your past. Accept the personal circumstances, accept your feelings. When we're depressed, we're unable to accept our circumstances and feelings. We see our present life as an unending struggle, and things tend to reoccur every time, and we give up easily, you know. But if we accept what is, and then we're better able to handle the adversities, the traumas that may occur in our life. Focus your attention on what you can control. Okay, again, when we're depressed, we tend to blame other people. We tend to blame circumstances or events that happen in our life. But we cannot control these things. Either they happened or we have little or no control. So focus on what you can control, and that's you. You know, so take the responsibility for doing those things that you need to do. You know, again, when people are depressed, they tend to blame other people. You know, and they feel that other people are very critical of them or unaccepting or rejecting of them. Or they blame circumstances or events that happen. So they don't take responsibility for what happens. Fourthly, monitor your thoughts. And that's very important. What are you thinking about? Is your mind filled with a lot of negative thoughts and negative thinking? Or are you trying to eliminate these negative thoughts by introducing more positive thoughts and positive feelings into your thinking? And lastly, respond, don't react. When we react, it's almost instinctive what we do. You know, by responding, we use the terminology, think before you act. Think how this is going to go over. You know, you're in a situation with another person. How is what you're going to say or what you're going to do come across? You know, so the more we're able to respond rather than react, I think we have a better grasp of handling depression in our life.
Well, Adrian, that was tremendous. So much information for our viewers. I mean, it's like deja vu for me over and over again. And we want to have you back over and over again as much as we can, because I know there are so many different topics. We could talk more about anger, more about depression, more about forgiveness, which is another big thing in healing.
Exactly.
And so many different topics that we talked about in the past that unfortunately we don't have any more time, but we will continue this again and again as much as we can to teach our viewers, like you've taught me, how to live a healthier life, you know. So
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I thank you, Sal, for that. And I said, coming from you, it's an important thing. And I appreciate everything you said.
Thank you. And we'll see you again soon. And thank you again for coming on the show.
You're very welcome.
So there you have it, Adrian Himmelbrand, powerhouse, you know, of information. And there's so much more information. Believe me, I've listened to him for 25 years. And it was like I said before, almost going to school. Listen to him. We used to listen to him once a week in our support groups under so many different topics, you know, that has to do with your health and changing your life, your lifestyle, and living a better life. If you want to contact me or Adrian, you could reach me at Sal DiBella, the number 2 at AOL.com, and thank you for tuning in to The Health Show.